Let's come back to the way in which the rediscovery of what ostensibly, traditionally is called the past has a different quality when there are more dimensions than just space-time. The phenomenality and the existentiality of space-time limit. They obviate, so that what is contained in space, indexed by time, remains then compartmentalized. The classic case of this was 5,000 years ago in Egypt. Even the very highest quality of the culture at the time, becoming dynastic Egypt about 3000 BC, arranging all of the nomes of Egypt, the northern set and the southern set brought together as one Egypt. Even there, the limitations of existentiality and phenomenality made a day a box. It was understood that one can have a new day, but that new day will be a new box that will be contiguous to the previous box as it was contiguous, and so on and so on, and will be and will be and will be. And that the linearity of this immense expanse is the horizon. It is the true horizon. There is a horizon of the world, as far as we can see, at that extent that that's the horizon of which the sun and the moon and the season of stars can rise or set. And so there is the understanding that this horizon, that the Lord of the horizon, the divinity who has the capacity to be the Lord of the horizon, is just so the Lord of millions of years, which one records day by day. This is an atomization of time that was the deepest impress that has lasted until our own day. And yes, there is a day and its complement the night. And in order to give a balance, a symmetry, a stability, the classic day meant that there is a 12-hour day and a 12-hour night. And that the traveler, the journeyer of this, is the sun going across the sky in the day, setting and going under the world, into the underworld for 12 hours at night. And it's not so much 12 hours as it is coming into confrontation with 12 gates. These are the 12 gates that portion out the underworld and are the underside of the box of the day. And while the sun is going through the 12 gate every night, cycle. We have an opportunity, because the sun now is in the underworld journey, to see the stars. And that masculine sun has a deep complement by the feminine stars. And the earliest way in which that was expressed is that the goddess Nut has a body which is star-spangled. And her body arches over the world with the fingertips on one part of the horizon and the toe tips on the other part of the horizon, and she spans with her star-spangled body the celestial joy of the fact that the sun is able to make its journey through the 12 gates successfully every night and rise sure as the sun rising. And if we can join in the wisdom of her star-spangled body, we will join in the courage of his 12-gated underworld passage into rebirth each day, each night. It took a tremendous, stronger than a Herculean insight to expand the visionary field so that one began to understand that there is something else at play here. And in the pyramid texts, and the 64th chapter of the pyramid text, one finds the first trigger indication. About 2500 BC, about 500 years later, that there is a continuity that had escaped from the box, from the container. Yes, it partook of the sun's courage and of the starry expanse's gloriousness, the feminine gloriousness of the starry world and the tremendous insightful courage of the masculine sun being able to come back and come back and come back for millions of years, day by day. That 64th chapter of what became the Egyptian Book of the Dead is the trigger that someone had understood, that in fact it was Thoth who had understood that one could use a language, a hieroglyphic, a sacred writing of language, and say, I am yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That the time in which I am real is not contained by space nor time, nor both tuned together, though it has a relationality. My reality is a continuity which is not limited to the containers, not limited to the gates, and in particular, not limited to what the gates present and represent. Each and every time that as one comes to the gate, it's the gate to a cavern. And you cannot pass through the gate unless you have the sacred language to be able to respond to the challenge that that gate is going to deliver to you. And only by having the language in its sacred penetration will you be able to go through the gate, but you will then be in that cavern. And the book of the 12 gates is also the book of the 12 caverns. And in order to have rebirth, tomorrow morning, dawn, you have to be able to remember what the sacred language is and how to shape its reply, because you will not be able to do it by rote. You will again have to be spontaneously able to remember and to pass not only through that night, but when the rebirth comes in, when the sun comes into play, it has its own radiance that does not efface the stars, but moves among the stars even though you cannot see them now. So you cannot be blinded by the radiance of what senses see, hear, feel, touch, mind conceives. That to mistake that for everything is the beginnings of dissolution. So that you have to remember the invisible, visionary, fifth dimension by day, and you have to remember the poetic, sacred language by night. And in this way, you are able not only to have the masculine navigate the 12 gates and the 12 caverns, but to still remember that one is doing this under the arch of the feminine starry wisdom. And so wisdom was always feminine. Not just for this reason, though one can say that, but in this way. And to rediscover when one had forgotten this is to the rediscovery of remembering. Because where it was forgotten was in a faulty, limited memory. Remembering does not forget. That's why it's remembering. It is always active in the field of vision. Always. It never not is active. And remembering as a dynamic in an infinite field of vision dances with creative imagining. And yes, creative imagining is the freedom sprung from the imagination. Just like remembering is the source of the memory. So while there is such a thing as the mind, as thought, having a structure to understand containers and squares and circles and triangles and so forth, that memory and that imagination are vehicle enhancers for the structure of symbolic thought, but they must be free to look through a transparent symbolism to get back to creative imagining, the art, and remembering, which is the history, so that the vision can leap into the science of the cosmos. This freedom was found by William Shakespeare when he was 28 years old. He'd gone through a series of years of being a teacher in the Lancastrian houses in the Midlands of England. He had come to London as a young man And his first job was taking care of the horses of riders that would come out to the edge of the smaller London and go to plays. And he got to know the family that owned the theater and loved the actors and loved the productions, the costumes, and was reading and reading and reading to get himself up to Renaissance speed. And one of his favorite writers was Ovid. And in Ovid, one finds the art of love. In several books of Ovid, who then brings into play the conscious visioning of love as the way in which the creative imagining and the remembering. Remember that Newt and the sun are not limited to the sun and the moon. That the moon, yes, is feminine, but that the earth also is feminine. The journeyer, if you're just looking at the sun, is masculine, but has to remember that the masculinity is in play and a feminine wisdom at the same time that it's reaching the challenges of remembering the sacred language, the poetic, by which one can continue and rise again, have a dawn. So that the sunset is the renewal each time of participation in a continuum, that the Lord of the horizon now is not the Lord of millions of years, but of infinity. The present is not a moment that splits the past and the future. It is a dip of the oar. In the Odyssey, Homer has Penelope tell Odysseus, after he has come back and won his kingdom, won his palace, won her again, he cannot cement this until he tethers it to an action which is necessary for those men who live by the power of dipping the oars, to take an oar and to go inland in Greece, from Ithaca to the mainland and north, until he comes upon a people who do not know what an oar is. They've never seen water bigger than the streams and something around them. And there to sacrifice, thanks for the homecoming, to Athena, like Newt, who guided him through the incredible Odyssey. Not just to find one's day of homecoming, which was taken away from all others, all other men, because they could not remember. They could not creatively imagine. But Odysseus, in having his day of homecoming, even though he had it, could not make it real until he was able to rejoin himself to the life of being with the feminine, of being with Penelope. And her name is always perfectly balanced. Penelope. It's like a tilde with two P's. Penelope, who then knows in her feminine wisdom that though he went away when he was 20 years old, when their son Telemachus was just babe, just barely able to walk. He was gone for 20 years. He was gone for half his life, and he was gone to kill on a massive vengeance scale. He went to Troy under the pressure of Agamemnon, making sure that Helen could not be stolen from his brother Menelaus by Paris of Troy. And not just to kill him, but to efface Troy from the face of the earth and kill all of the Trojans, men, women, and children. And that this overweening masculine viciousness was the obfuscation, was the intent to make an oblique blip out of life and love and capacity. And that he had fallen into an unknown trance of murderous vengeance and being very good at it, especially good. He had the same attitude of his homecoming, that he was going to make his way regardless, relentlessly, willful. Because kings of that ilk, that order, do that. Whereas to recover as Athena's gray-eyed horizon, which is the infinite horizon of the real. She says again and again to him, do not lie to me. I know very well who you are. It's for you to remember who you are and who you are talking to and who you will be talking to, because Penelope has my eyes. She can see the horizon of the real. And you must be able to live with that horizon of the real, or you will not have her, or your homecoming, or yourself. When he wrote his first great play, which is A Midsummer Night's Dream, the central homecoming was one of the actors in a play within the play named Bottom, who, because he messes around with being careless about being real, is turned into a donkey, turned into an ass. He made an ass out of himself. And in order for the king of the fairies to serve notice that he is really the power, he makes it kind of like a quality where his queen, Titania, is going to be put under a spell. He doesn't do it because he doesn't know how to do it, but he knows that he has someone on his staff, in fact, named Robin Goodfellow in the mythologies, in the fairy tales, but named Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. And when he sprinkles the juice of a very, very potent charm, drug, herb on her sleeping eyelids, she will fall in love with the first person that she hears their voice. And when she awakens at night in the forest, she hears poor Bottom, now become an ass, braying and trying to sing the song that he's supposed to have in the play within the play, and she falls in love with the braying of this ass. And the ridiculousness of the whole scene is the play within the play within the play in A Midsummer Night's Dream. So that at the very end of the play, first produced in 1592, Will was just barely 28 years old. The last scene, everybody else goes to bed, goes to sleep. All the marriages take place that were problematic throughout the play, and they're alone in front of the evening campfire, midsummer's campfire near St. John's Day, which is just a couple of days after the solstice, the 23rd of June. The epilogue is spoken by Puck directly to the audience. And for 400 years he has said, "If we shadows have offended, think but this, and all is mended. That you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear. And this weak and idle theme, no more yielding but a dream. Gentles, do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend. And as I am an honest Puck, if we have unearned luck, now to escape the serpent's tongue, we will make amends ere long. Else the pick a liar call. So, good night unto you all. Give me your hands if we be friends, and Robin shall restore amends." He doesn't leave the stage, he vanishes. That's what the first quarto, published in 1600, emphasizes. He doesn't leave, he vanishes. This quality of the donkey comes from Apuleius. Apuleius, who loved Ovid's great love works, but also loved his masterwork, was called the Metamorphoses, and he wrote his own Metamorphoses that translates as the Golden Ass, because the protagonist is a man who turns into an ass, turns into a donkey, and goes through all kinds of convolutions. And only after 10 books of being an ass of a man is he restored back because of Isis, who restores him back to being a human, back to being a better human, because he can still have all the remembering as he was as an ass. And the asinine world in which he was seen and considered thus and so and no more, now he is able to see, as the cover of the latest reprinting of the Penguin Classic of Apuleius, the Golden Ass. In the previous edition, some 20-some years before, they truncated it so that one didn't see Isis. And they blurred the top so that one did not see that Hermes not only has the caduceus of Hermes, but in the other hand, he has the kind of sistrum instrument that Isis has. The metal sistrum has 3 bars, and it has little ringing capacities, but when it's shook, it makes a light cacophony which scatters the abilities for language, for diction, for speaking, for attention, or anything to have. It's a confusion-making wand for those who can be mazed. If you can be mazed, you don't know how to be free, to be amazed. You don't have any access to vision. The caduceus is the way in which one understands the night stars, her star emblazoned body that has the cycles of the moon, is not only the cycles of the moon fitting into the starry expanse, but the moon also exists going into the day, and one can still see phases of the moon during the day. And there is such a thing as a midsummer or a midwinter moonrise and sunrise, a moon set or a moon rise, a sunset or a sunrise, that they can be equidistant from the horizon. And every Vajrayana tanka, when it's being real, really real, will have those two together in the corners, in the angles of the way in which one does not only look up and out, but looks real, for real. When we come next week, we'll be able to take Apuleius and Ovid and put them back into the 1100s, back into that time period from 1100 to 1199, and understand that in there were incredible events that brought the heroic fierceness of an Iliad into the challenge of an Odyssey, and delivered the consecration that there is some special thing called romance. And what in 1135 in Geoffrey of Monmouth was the manly Arthur adventures held by the magician Merlin to come into play like a serious puck, there is such a thing as a Midsummer Night's Dream that one can go through and come back into the realization about love in its romance of being able to energize through the horizon that used to be a limitation of divinity, and now is but the way in which one can index the highs and lows of an energy called thrice greatest time waves. More next week.